Uses of writing in Mesopotamia. There could be little learning and no literature without writing. When we talk about writing or script, we mean that spoken words are represented in visible signs. Writing is the process of using symbols, letters of alphabet, punctuation marks or spaces in order to communicate our thoughts and ideas, particularly in a readable manner. It is one of the 4 language skills. Thus, the development of art of writing in Mesopotamia had contributed significantly to the development of literature. Most of the people recognized the value of writing for the preservation of history. For instance, the great Indian freedom fighter Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, while in prison, wrote to his own daughter a long series of letters on world history. So thus, the art of writing has preserved the knowledge of every subject. It has greatly helped in the spread of literacy, mostly in the cities, as the people in early cities largely belonged to professional classes and traders. Thus, the traders could maintain their record of transactions in writing than in any other form. Advantages of writing in Mesopotamia. Advantages means uses of writing in Mesopotamia. We usually use writing for expressing our extensive love, happiness, sorrows, anger, or anything to our dearest and nearest ones or to ourselves. So by 2600 BC or so, the letters became cuneiform and the language was Sumerian in Mesopotamia. And writing was used for many purposes. Writing was used for maintaining the official records. It was proved advantageous for preparing dictionaries. It was used for declaring legal validity to land transfer. It was beneficial for narrating the deeds of kings. It helped in announcing the changes of the customary laws of the land by a king. It proved beneficial for dispatching the royal messages to the neighboring or distant lands. Writing was used for maintaining the ration distribution list of Mesopotamians. It also facilitated for storing information and sending messages from one to another. Literacy in Mesopotamia. So literacy means the ability to read and write. It is an essential skill in contemporary societies. Whereas literate means people who could read and write. Who could read and write. And the opposite of literate is illiterate. Whether there were widespread of literacy in Mesopotamia or not could be partly aware through the following letter and a poem. It seems there were few Mesopotamians who could read and write. The complex signs ran into hundreds, were hard to memorize as well as to write. If a king could read, he made sure that this was written in one of his boastful inscriptions. There is an example of a letter from an official which read out to the king. It would start as, "To my lord," humbly said by the servant. In response, the king had permitted him to speak as per his request. Thus, having sought the king's permission, the servant said that he had carried out the work assigned by the king. And there is a long mythical poem about creation which would end like this. Let these verses be held in remembrance, and let the elder teach those verses to others. Let the wise man and the scholar discuss about these verses. Let the father repeat these verses to his sons. Let the ears of even the headsman be heard of these verses. Next, the use of writing in a long Sumerian epic poem. So, writing has highlighted in a long Sumerian epic poem about Enmerkar, who was one of the earliest rulers of Uruk. You must know that Uruk was an excellent city and was often known as the city. Enmerkar is associated with the organization of the first trade of Sumer, as mentioned in early epic. That trade was not known to Mesopotamia. You know, Enmerkar once required lapis lazuli and precious metals for the beautification of a city temple, and thus dispatched his messenger out to a distant land called Aratha. Aratha is an archaeological site located in Iran. So he thus dispatched his messenger out to a distant land called Aratha in order to procure them. The messenger went off, by heeding the word of the king through days by the sun and nights by the stars. He crossed the mountain ranges one by one with carrying the promises and threats of the king in his mind. Wherever he journeyed, people saluted him by taking as a messenger of the king. The messenger, somehow couldn't find the chief of Aratha. He had journeyed from one place to another time and again, and finally the messenger was exhausted and got all the messages mixed up. Later, Enmerkar thus formed a clay tablet and wrote down the words. So we must know in those days there had been no system of writing on clay. Then when the messenger arrived in Aratha, he presented the tablet to the king of Aratha. The king of Aratha examined the clay tablet with his frowned face as the spoken words were nails, and kept looking at it. So it indicates he might not have known the system of writing on clay. Thus, in Mesopotamian understanding, it was only kingship that had organized both the trade and writing. So, this poem reflects that despite the writing has used as the means of storing information and sending messages afar, it is also seen as a symbol of superiority of the Mesopotamian urban culture. Here you can have the image of Enmerkar. Next, we would move on to urbanization in southern Mesopotamia, temples and kings. So what is meant by urbanization? Urbanization means the shift of population from rural to urban areas, thereby enabling cities or towns to grow. So how rapid the urbanization has taken place in southern Mesopotamia can be studied by specifically referring to the temples and kings. So by 5000 BCE, settlements began in Mesopotamia. The earliest cities were emerged from some of these settlements. There were three kinds of cities came into emergence. Firstly, cities that developed around temples. So Uruk was one of the ancient Mesopotamian cities that developed around temples. Secondly, cities that developed as centers of trade. Here Ur and Mari were two cities that developed as centers of trade. And thirdly, the imperial cities. So in this chapter, the cities of the first two kinds will be discussed respectively. Cities that developed around temples. The first point is dealt with origin of early settlers and establishment of early temples in southern Mesopotamia. So the early settlers, whose origin are unknown in southern Mesopotamia, had built and rebuilt temples at selected areas in their villages. The earliest known temple was a small shrine. You can have here the look of a small shrine made up of unbaked bricks. The temples were served as the residence of various gods, moon god of Ur or of Inanna, the goddess of love and war. Temples constructed in bricks became larger over time with several rooms around open courtyards. Some early temples existed similar to that of ordinary house. Temples always had their outer walls going in and out at regular intervals, which no ordinary house had. The first image shows the earliest temple, and this is the entrance of the temple leading to the main temple. The availability of the fire altar indicates of the religious beliefs and practices of the Mesopotamians, and the oven was also built at the outer part of the temple for making fire or for cooking purpose. And the second image shows the temple of a later period with an open courtyard and in and around facade as excavated. Mesopotamian religion and beliefs. So Mesopotamians were polytheistic. They believed in the worship of many gods, and they also believed in life after death. The sources for Mesopotamian afterlife beliefs include burials, grave inscriptions, economic texts recording the disbursements for funeral or cults of the dead, references to death in royal inscriptions and edicts and omens, etc. So these are the available sources through which we could restudy the afterlife beliefs of Mesopotamians. Here you can have the look of Inanna temple at Uruk and the moon temple at Ur. Okay, here the first image indicates the establishment of the Inanna temple at Uruk, whereas the second image indicates the moon temple established at Ur. So these two temples served as the residence of the respective gods or goddesses. The god was the focus of worship. To him or her, the god may be male or female. People brought grain, curd or fish because the floors of some early temples had thick layers of fish bones. The god was considered as the theoretical owner of agricultural fields, the fisheries, the herds of the local community. Having based on my personal example, when my mother was alive, she annually made offering of the best harvested agricultural product to her devoted god or goddess. So the offering reflects a strong sense of respect, devotion and gratitude for the things that the god or goddesses have showered on us. Temples served as production cum employment centers. In the Mesopotamian temples, production processes such as oil pressing, grain grinding, spinning and weaving of woolen clothes were taking place on a routine basis. So thus temple became the main urban institution by organizing production, employing merchants and keeping records of distribution of allotments of grain, bread, plough, animals, beer, fish, etc. Apart from that, temple also served as a center of imparting education where the priest used to serve as teachers. And next, causes of continuous warfare for land and water. The archaeological record shows that villages were occasionally relocated in Mesopotamian history because of the occurrence of flood in the river and change in the course of the rivers. There were also man-made problems occurred in time. Those who lived in upstream. Upstream means a higher part of a stream. So those who lived on upstream stretches of a channel could divert immense water into their fields, that villages of downstream were left without water, or they had neglected to remove the silt from the stretch of the channel. This blocked the flow of river further down. Hence, there was shown continuous warfare in Mesopotamian villages for land and water. How did kings declare their influence or power in southern Mesopotamia? So during the occurrence of continuous warfare, those chiefs or kings who were proved successful in war would favor their followers by distributing the loot and took prisoners from the defeated groups to employ as their guards and servants. The war leaders could sustain if they could strengthen the well-being of the community with the establishment of new institutions or practices. The victorious kings reflected their influence and power by offering precious booty to the gods and thus beautified the community's temples. The role of kings in construction and maintenance of temples in southern Mesopotamia. The Mesopotamian rulers sent men to the distant lands to fetch fine stones and metals for the benefit of the god and community as a whole. They organized the distribution of temple wealth in an efficient manner by maintaining a detailed record for things that reached or distributed. The poem about Enmerkar clearly indicates that this has strengthened the status of the king and his authority to command for the community. And next, the role of kings in construction and maintenance of temples in Mesopotamia. So war captives. War captives means people captured during the warfare, and local people, they both had to work for the temple or for the ruler directly on compulsory basis apart from agricultural tax. Those who were put to work were paid rations, and there were availability of hundreds of ration lists against people's name, quantity of grain, cloth or oil allotted to the war captives or the local people. It has estimated that one of the temples took 1,500 men working 10 hours a day and 5 years to build. So the Mesopotamian rulers had also commanded people to fetch stones or metal ores or to make bricks or to lay bricks for the temples. So this image shows the remains of a temple at Uruk. Now we would move on to Uruk. So Uruk was one of the ancient Mesopotamian cities that developed around temples. Here you can have the location of Uruk, which was once situated in southern Mesopotamia. So Uruk was situated on the bank of the river Euphrates. About 2,500 kilometers southeast of modern capital of Baghdad. It was an ancient Mesopotamian city and was reckoned to be the most extensive town of the contemporary world. So according to the Sumerian king list, it was founded by King Enmerkar around 4500 BCE. The next famous ruler of this town was Gilgamesh. He declared Uruk as the capital of his empire. The leaders of Uruk encouraged settlement of villages to remain close to each other so as to be able to rapidly have an army together. Moreover, they would remain safe while living proximity to each other. So at one of the earliest temple towns of Uruk, we find depictions of armed heroes and their victims and careful archaeological surveys have indicated that around 3000 BCE, when Uruk grew into the large extent of 250 hectares, twice as large as Mohenjo-daro in the later centuries, dozens of small villages were abundant. They has shown a major population shift that has shown a way to erect a defensive wall at a very early date. So this defensive wall was said to be built by King Gilgamesh. Here you can find the statue of King Gilgamesh. Okay, so Uruk was continuously occupied from about 4200 BCE to about 400 CE, and by about 2800 BCE it had further expanded to 400 hectares. And this image shows a defensive wall erected by King Gilgamesh of Uruk. And next we would move on to the technical advances at Uruk. Soriki yarge namba 강강 중유메레 우룩이 계살라 무디레 technical advances at Uruk. So there were technical advances at Uruk about 3000 BC. Bronze tools came into use for various crafts. So the bronze tool makers produced a wide range of bronze tools, for instance tips of the spears of weapons and hand axes. Architects also learned to construct big columns. Hundreds of people were employed in making and baking clay of cones. So this image shows clay of cones that could be pushed into temple walls. So these were painted in different colors and created a colorful mosaics. In terms of sculptures, there were finds of superb achievements produced out of imported stone in Mesopotamia, such as the worker hat, sculptures of the great kings, and sculptures of gods and goddesses. You can find here the worker hat, the bronze sculpture of a woman, and next the potter's wheel. The invention, the potter's wheel enabled a potter's workshop to produce mass dozens of same pots at one time. This image shows the potter's wheel, which helped in producing a large scale of pots. So besides, there are two other technical advances taking place at Uruk. Basalt stele. So basalt is a type of black rock that comes from a volcano. So basalt stele shows a bearded man twice. Bearded man twice. In the lower scene, he attacks a lion with a huge bow and arrow, whereas in the above scene, the hero finally kills the rampant lion with a spear. So stele means stone slabs with inscriptions or carvings. So the stele was erected to some extent as a monument to the victory of Mesopotamian kings. The stele was also used as territorial markers. And the last technical advance is the cylindrical seal. The cylindrical seal came into popular use during the 4th millennium BCE in the middle and late Uruk period. So these are specimens of what? The cylindrical seals. Cylinder or cylindrical seals were made by a seal cutter known as burgul in Sumerian. So unlike the smaller stamp seals, cylinder seals provided an artist with the room to explore a certain motif. And these motifs not only make clear the identity of the individual who bore the seal but give significant details about their jobs and a way of life. The seals were worn by their owners on strings of leather or other material around their neck. Their purpose was to serve as a personal signature on the moist clay of document or to legitimize a business deal. The pictorial, scenes refer to activities such as weaving, attending domestic animals, hunting, and apparently ritual actions may indicate spheres of administrative competence within the Uruk economy. It also tells us a story of the people more completely than royal reliefs or towering statues ever can. So the loss of cylindrical seal was taken seriously as one today we would view the loss of credit cards. After finding one had lost one's seal, the former owner would record the date and time of loss with an official to ensure that transactions made after the loss would be invalid. So the Mesopotamians also believed in wearing the seal as an amulet which would ward off evil spirits and protect one from harmful effects. And there was no shortage of demand for cylinder seals by the people of Mesopotamia. The seal cutters therefore were of highly demand, highly paid and greatly respected for their craft. They would have lived more comfortably. The seal, an urban artifact. Artifact means a man-made object. Cylindrical seal. Okay, this is a cylindrical seal, and this is an impression made by this cylinder seal, and these are a wide range of impressions made by these seals. So in India, early stone seals were stamped, whereas in Mesopotamia until the end of the first millennium BCE, cylindrical stone seals pierced down the center, had fixed with a stick and rolled down over a wet clay so that a continuous picture could create. A seal could be rolled on clay covering the string knot of a cloth package or the mouth of a pot, keeping the contents safe. When rolled on a letter written on a clay tablet, it would become a symbol of authenticity. And they were crafted by very skilled craftsmen and sometimes carry, as I said before, writing the name of the owner, his god, official position, etc. So the seal was the symbol of a city dweller's role in public life